With breaking news in Minneapolis. Protesters there now, they're starting to disperse after a long and very cold day of speaking out against ICE in the city. Many Americans are watching in horror as thousands of federal agents swarm streets in Minnesota, all in the name of public safety and an unprecedented mass deportation campaign. And Democrats are now facing a familiar dilemma. Should they give DHS even more money as the government barrels toward another budget deadline at the end of the month? Or do they, at a minimum, make sure this does not go down without a fight? For many, things truly feel different now. That question comes after Americans have witnessed a near constant stream of violence and intimidation. They've spent days watching on and fellow Americans get tackled to the ground, pepper sprayed at close range, questioned about whether or not they truly count as citizens. There's a growing sense ICE and Border Patrol may simply just be out of control. The videos, the images, they're powerful. Take January 11th in Minneapolis. You can see somebody get taken out of a vehicle and then pushed against the side of the car as they hold their hands up. Or this video from Tuesday, where agents are seen physically dragging a woman as she tells them she is autistic and she's just trying to get to a doctor's appointment. And of course, there was last week's deadly shooting of Renee Good, which has become a nationwide flashpoint over ICE's very existence. DHS has disputed many of these accounts and regularly says officers follow proper procedures. But it's stories like these that have almost certainly contributed to Americans souring on ICE. A new CNN poll found 51% of Americans say ICE, its actions in major cities are making things less safe. And an Economist YouGov poll found 46% support abolishing ICE completely. And the criticism is now coming from the corners of the world that have supported Trump's agenda in the past. Look at this.
And I can also see the point of view of the people that say, yeah, but you don't want militarized people in the streets just roaming around, snatching people up, many of which turn out to actually be U.S. citizens that just don't have their papers on them. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to?
I don't believe the cop was justified in shooting her 3 times in the face. These are not well-trained law enforcement people in ICE right now. This is not the cream of the crop. You know the guys that kidnapped Maduro, like Delta Force, Navy SEALs? This is not them. This is not the Delta Force, Navy SEAL people. This is people that, this is people on their 3rd grade report card the teacher wrote that has violent tendencies.
And joining us now is New York Congressman Adriano Espaillat. He is the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Congressman, it's good to have you here at the table.
Thank you for having me again.
I know you just got back from Minnesota. You were listening to Americans testify about the way in which they have been treated there. But I'm glad that you're here with us because we've had this conversation with you before. The escalations,
yes,
the drastic changes that we've seen, not just to ICE, but truly to DHS. Yes. And the entire sort of federal immigration apparatus. You've now said that you believe ICE should be dismantled. Walk me through what that means.
I really thought for a long time that it could be reformed, that while they work, we can make some changes and make it better. But I think there's a culture now gripping the agency that's very violent. ICE is now a very aggressive and violent weapon, a deadly weapon. We saw what happened to Renee Good. So I feel now that there needs to be a pause. It needs to be dismantled. And we need to take a deep dive and really have a deep discussion as how we should proceed. Things like unmasking agents should be on the table. Whether or not they should hold high caliber weapons. Immigration is civil law, it's not criminal law. In fact, immigrants are not entitled to an attorney because it's civil law. But in addition to that, we should take a look at sensitive locations, whether houses of worship, schools, and hospitals should be sacred places. We should take a look at all these things and have a discussion as to how we move forward. Right now, the entity, ICE, is gripped in a violent culture that I think warrants it to be dismantled.
There's also been a debate within the Democratic Party about not just changing some of the policies around the edges, like requiring people to show their faces or not have these raids on sensitive sites like schools and churches, but whether to, quote unquote, abolish ICE, which is something that you have in the past voiced support for and have walked back. We've actually seen a lot of different verbs used by Democrats recently. I think we have a list of them. Reform ICE, abolish ICE, rein in, strict guardrails, restrain, no more funding. What is, in practical terms, the difference between dismantling ICE versus abolishing ICE versus any of these other things? I guess I'm trying to understand, is this a semantic difference?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the semantics because I think if we do that, that we lose the forest for the trees. I think that the important thing is that it's at a crisis, and anytime any entity of this magnitude is at a crisis level where 51% of Americans feel that it's not really making things safer, we need to take a pause and dismantle it. Funding needs to be discussed because the funding, the dollars are the ones that are fueling this aggressive, violent behavior.
But for example, dismantling suggests that, like, all of the people who have been hired recently would be let go. No? I mean, that's what I would, as a layperson, take away.
That's not necessarily what it means to me.
Okay.
You know, dismantling is taking it apart, taking a deep dive, having a full discussion with America to understand and come to a conclusion as to how we should move forward in terms of public safety as it relates to immigration.
So just to be clear, you're not for getting rid of ICE, you're for dismantling it and then kind of reconstituting it in some way? I mean, well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, well, first of all, do you believe ICE right now is operating out of the law?
I believe that some of the ICE agents are operating out of the law.
So as an organization, why would you want that organization to exist?
We don't. We want to dismantle it. No, I'm saying.
So you want it to go?
There must be some in the future.
There must be some kind of immigration enforcement mechanism, but ICE, as you know it today, should no longer exist as it is.
In fact,
today.
The name ICE should disappear.
Should disappear.
So what should it be called, though? There has to be immigration and customs enforcement.
Correct. I mean,
it used to be something before that. I mean, it used to be.
I mean, we could have a full discussion about the name in another.
Okay, let's continue. And also, this is hypothetical because Democrats don't have the numbers right now to dismantle or abolish ICE.
But they do have the ability to put up a fight in just a couple of weeks.
In a couple of weeks, they could force a government shutdown over funding for DHS. Are you willing to have another government shutdown over this issue?
I'm not willing to vote for a budget bill that continues to fuel the violent behavior of that entity, ICE. I'm not willing to vote for a budget bill that doesn't present any major changes to the current condition, which is an entity that has become a very aggressive and violent weapon. And so I'm not willing to vote for that, no.
So you're willing to accept all the tangential, do you think Democrats are with you on that and accept all the tangential consequences of another shutdown?
Well, people vote for or against a bill for many reasons. Mm-hmm. Some folks may vote against something because there's not enough funding for the agricultural sector. Or some people may say, I'm not voting for that bill, which is a comprehensive bill, because it doesn't have enough funding for education, or it has bad things in it. I'm saying that given what I saw in Minnesota, what I saw in Chicago, and the hearing that we had in D.C., it is at a crisis situation. I'm not the only one saying that. You said today that 51% of the American people are also on my side. So, yes, we must take some action.
All right, so it's 51% of the American people on your side. Maybe not some of the Democratic Party are on your side. And I want to play for you California Governor Gavin Newsom, what he said to Ben Shapiro about ICE. Take a listen.
Your press office tweeted out that it was state-sponsored terrorism, which, I mean, Governor, I do have to ask you about that. Yeah. That sort of thing makes our politics worse. Yeah. I mean, it does. Yeah. I mean, our ICE officers obviously are not terrorists. Yeah. A tragic situation is not state-sponsored terrorism.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So when AOC said this week that ICE should be abolished, you disagree?
Oh, I disagree when I think a candidate for president by the name of Harris said that in the last campaign. I came out. I remember being on Chris Hayes hours later saying, I think that's a mistake. So absolutely.
All right, so that's a potential Democratic hopeful in 2028 saying he does not believe that ICE should be dismantled or, I think, abolished. Abolished. Thanks for that correction. But I want to give you a chance to respond to what you just heard there. First of all, do you think that, and you said that ICE agents, some of them are operating out of the law, they invoke and inject a lot of fear into our communities and our societies. That is a form of terrorism to those people, no?
Well, they shot someone in the face and killed him,
yeah.
One of those agents. They dragged a woman from a car and slammed her on the floor. Over 30 people have died last year in their custody and 4 this year already. So it's an entity that's gripped, as I said earlier, by a culture of aggressiveness and violence. Now, I like the governor. In fact, I just met him recently. He seems to be a nice person, but he's not a member of Congress. And so he won't have a vote in that debate. I
Some
respect
Senate Democrats, though, they sound a bit like the message we just heard from the governor there.
Well, I respect that. But I bet you that if you were to ask many members of Congress whether they feel that ICE should be en masse, they will tell you, sure, they shouldn't be anonymous. They should have a first name and a last name. They should have a shield number. If you ask a member of Congress, should ICE storm into your house of worship while you're praying to God? They'll tell you no. Should ICE be around a school when you're bringing your kids in or out of school? And they'll tell you no. You say, should ICE be in the emergency room behind a nurse while she's taking care of a senior citizen? I think their answer will be no. So when I'm talking about dismantling ICE and taking a deep dive, these are some of the recommendations that I'm making for whatever future role we may want to take.
Congressman, it's great to have you on the show. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.